The following is a DW Ancient Egypt production. In the last episode, we focused on Ramesses III, Egypt's final monarch to yield any substantial power over the kingdom. With his assassination and the failure of the conspirators to gain control, the rule passed to his rightful heir, Ramesses IV. The topics of this episode include Pharaoh Ramesses IV, Ramesses V, Ramesses VI, Ramesses VII and VIII, Ramesses IX and X, and Ramesses XI. Due to the decade-long rule of his father, Ramesses IV was most likely in his 40s when he became king in 1155 BC. As we noted in the last episode, Ramesses III, his father, was assassinated by conspirators led by T, one of his secondary wives, to establish Pentaweret, her own son, and Ramesses IV's half-brother, on the throne. His first task was to bury his father and round up, arrest, and execute the conspirators. Once that was accomplished, he initiated a substantial building program to enlarge his father's temple of Khonsu at Karnak, and a large mortuary temple for himself near the temple of Hatshepsut. He doubled the work gangs at Deir el-Medina and sent the largest expedition ever recorded to the Wadi Hammam. This involved 8,368 men, including 2,000 soldiers who policed the workforce. These men dragged stones 60 miles to the Nile, some of which weighed over 40 tons. Other Egyptian quarries were located much closer to the Nile, which enabled them to use barges to transport these stones. Despite Ramesses IV's prayer to Osiris, as recorded on his stele at Abydos, "Thou shalt give me the great age with a long reign," he did not live long enough to complete his ambitious goals and died after only 6 years. The tomb of Ramesses IV, KV2, lies just outside the main group in the eastern Valley of the Kings. Like the other tombs of the 20th dynasty, KV2 is laid out along a straight axis. The successors of Ramesses III from this dynasty constructed tombs that follow this pattern, and most were decorated in a similar manner to each other. The tomb had a maximum length of 88 meters and consisted of 3 gently sloping corridors, followed by a chamber, a burial chamber, and a corridor beyond with side chambers. The original plan of the tomb was altered after the death of the king, and the chamber, which would have been pillared, was used for the burial chamber. This tomb had brightly colored and detailed wall paintings with scenes from the Litany of Ra, Book of Caverns, Book of the Dead, Book of Amduat, and the Book of the Heavens. The large sarcophagus box and its lid were located in the burial hall. The tomb was one of about 11 tombs opened during the ancient times, and graffiti are scattered throughout that record the names of the 656 ancient Greek and Roman visitors. A unique papyrus discovered in the city of Turin provided a detailed depiction of this tomb in 1:28 scale. All the passages and chambers are present, with measurements written in hieratic script. The papyrus plan also depicts the pharaoh's sarcophagus surrounded by 4 concentric sets of shrines, the same layout of shrines that were found intact within Tutankhamun's tomb. Another plan of the tomb was found inscribed on a slab of limestone not far from the tomb's entrance, which was a rough layout of the tomb depicting the location of its doors, most likely a workman's drawing. The mummy of Ramesses IV was found in the royal cache in Amenhotep II's tomb, KV35, in 1898. Ramesses V's reign, from 1149 to 1145 BC, was characterized by the continued growth of power of the priesthood of Amun, which controlled much of the temple land in the country and state finances at the expense of the pharaoh. A period of domestic instability also affected his reign. The workmen at Deir el-Medina periodically stopped work on his tomb during his first year out of fear of the enemy. This was most likely from Libyan raiding parties, who also invaded Thebes a few days later. This reveals that the Egyptian state was having difficulties ensuring the security of its own elite tomb workers, let alone the general populace. Ramesses V died in his 4th year of reign. His mummy was recovered in 1898 and indicated that he may have died of smallpox, since lesions were found on his face. He is thought to be one of the earliest known victims of the disease. He may not have been buried right away. His successor, Ramesses VI, reported that he needed to clear out any Libyans from Thebes and to provide a temporary tomb for Ramesses V until plans for a double burial within tomb KV9 could be put into effect. It seems his brother was moving in and expanding his burial tomb at the time of Libyan incursions. Ramesses VI's reign from 1145 to 1137 BC experienced the decline of Egypt's control over much of the Near East. The turquoise mines in the Sinai were abandoned, and the eastern frontier was pulled back from Palestine to the edges of the eastern delta. Though Egyptian occupation in Nubia continued, the loss of the Asiatic territories strained Egypt's weakening economy and increased prices. With construction projects increasingly hard to fund, Ramesses VI usurped the monuments of his forefathers by engraving his cartouches over theirs. He was fond of cult statues of himself. More are known to portray him than any 20th dynasty king after Ramesses III. The Egyptologist Amun characterized Ramesses VI as a king who wishes to pose as a great pharaoh in an age of unrest and decline. His most interesting statue, discovered in Karnak, shows him grasping the head of a Libyan foe. In the words of Egyptologist Bob Breyer, he really would be Egypt's last victorious pharaoh. When he died, Ramesses VI was succeeded by his son, Ramesses VII, and buried in KV9, possibly with Ramesses V. KV9 was about 117 meters in length and consisted of an entryway ramp, 3 corridors, followed by a chamber, a pillared chamber with a central descent, 2 lower corridors, another chamber, a vaulted burial chamber, and another chamber at the rear. The workmen accidentally broke into KV12 as they were digging the lower corridors for Ramesses VI. The tomb as a whole was discovered with a wide variety of scenes, but nearly 1,000 graffiti in Greek, Latin, and Coptic were written over them since the tomb was left open after the robbery. This robbery took place shortly after his burial, and the grave robbers hacked away at his hands and feet in order to gain access to his jewelry. A medical examination of this mummy, which was found in 1898, revealed severe damage to his body. The head and torso were broken in several pieces. Of all the royal mummies, Ramesses VI was the one most savagely attacked by tomb robbers. The priests had piously rewrapped the pieces on a board in an effort to make it resemble human form. When Elliot Smith examined it in 1905, he found portions of at least 2 other bodies included within the wrappings. The creation of Ramesses VI's tomb protected Tutankhamun's tomb from grave robbers, since debris from its formation was dumped on top of his tomb entrance. With the end of the 20th dynasty, Egypt was economically unstable and grain prices soared to the highest level. The last of the pharaohs bearing the name of Ramses is very obscure. Ramesses VII, who ruled from 1137 to 1130 BC, was buried in KV1 after a 7-year reign. KV1 was only 44 meters in length. This unfinished tomb comprised an open entryway, a corridor, a vaulted burial chamber, and an unfinished chamber with a rear recess. The vaulted burial chamber was originally the second corridor, which was converted into a burial chamber upon the king's death. This is the last known example of a sarcophagus placed in a royal tomb. All subsequent burials consisted of deeper pits which were covered by a lid. The tomb was robbed in antiquity, and the mummy has not been discovered. This tomb was one of at least 11 tombs that were open to the early travelers, as proven by the graffiti left by ancient visitors. In terms of style, it closely follows that of its immediate predecessor, Ramesses VI tomb, KV9, though the ceiling within the burial chamber contains a double image of the sky goddess, Nut, reflecting a style used in tomb paintings by pharaohs of the previous dynasty. Ramesses VII was succeeded by a son of Ramesses III, who took the name Ramesses VIII. He is the most obscure ruler of the dynasty, who ruled around 1130 to 1129 BC. He has no tomb and no identifiable mummy. Before he became pharaoh, the tomb QV43 in the Valley of the Queens was constructed for him. However, the tomb was never used. Under Ramesses IX, who ruled from 1129 to 1111 BC, Egypt returned to some degree of stability, although there is not much to show for it in terms of monuments or records. It was during his reign that the first of a series of scandals developed concerning the tomb robberies in the valley. These robberies mainly took place in year 16 of his reign, although there had been an earlier incident with the robbery of KV9. The affair came to light after reports were made to the vizier. He ordered a commission to investigate, and they discovered that 9 out of the 10 tombs checked had been robbed. The verbatim accounts of the trials of several of the culprits have survived in over a dozen papyri, known as the tomb robbing papyri. We found the burial place of the royal wife. We forced it open. We opened their outer coffins, their inner coffins in which they lay. We found this noble mummy of this king equipped like a warrior. Large number of sacred eye amulets and ornaments of gold was at his neck, and his headpiece of gold was on him. The noble mummy of this king was all covered with gold, and his inner coffins were created of gold and silver, inside and outside, with inlays of all kinds of precious stones. We appropriated the gold which we found on this noble mummy of this god, and his eye amulets, his ornaments which were at his neck, and in the coffins in which he lay. We found the royal wife likewise, and we took all that we found on her too. We set fire to their inner coffins. We stole their outfits which we found on them, consisting of objects of gold, silver, and bronze, and divided them into 8 parts. The punishment for these acts against the Egyptian state and their religion was certainly death, most likely impalement. Ramesses IX's tomb, KV6, was 105 meters long and consisted of an open entry ramp, 3 successive corridors, a chamber, and an unfinished pillared chamber with central descent that led to a burial chamber. KV6 has one of the largest entrances in the valley and was the last royal tomb to have so much of its decoration completed. At the time of the death of the king, only corridors B and C had been plastered, and only the painted decoration in corridor B had been completed. The remaining plastering and painting of the ceiling and walls of the tomb were hastily finished. The walls of KV6 contain over 50 graffiti, mainly located on the upper part of the walls, indicating the tomb was partly filled with debris during antiquity. The mummy of Ramesses IX was found in the 1881 cache. Ramesses X is a poorly documented king. There was a massive influx of Libyan invaders into the western delta region of Lower Egypt during his reign. He is the last New Kingdom pharaoh to rule Nubia, as they soon revolted. His tomb in the valley, KV18, was unfinished with very little decoration remaining. The tomb was about 43 meters long and consisted of an entryway and 2 sections of corridor separated by gates. The lintel of Gate B is decorated with the sun disk of the horizon, and Corridor B is decorated with representations of Ramesses X with deities. This tomb appears to have been abandoned. Most of the painted relief decoration was lost due to flooding. Ramses X's mummy has not been found. During the reign of the next king, Ramses XI, from 1107 to 1077 BC, the priests of Amun at Thebes exerted their power and established a new dynasty, breaking away from the north. Sometime during this confusing and troubled period, Ramses XI died under unknown circumstances. Shortly before his death, he transferred Egypt's political capital to Tanis, where he died and was buried by Smendes, who succeeded him but only ruled Lower Egypt, while Herihor ruled Upper Egypt as the high priest of Egypt at Thebes. While he had a tomb prepared for himself in the valley, KV4, it was left unfinished and only partly decorated. An entryway, 3 gently sloping corridors, lead to the well chamber E and pillared chamber F. From the ramped descent, a short corridor leads to the burial chamber. A deep 30-foot shaft descends from the unfinished burial chamber, which was perhaps designed as an additional security device to prevent tomb robbery, and its pillars are rectangular instead of square, with the ceiling between them vaulted. This would be the last royal tomb cut in the Valley of the Kings. Ramses XI arranged to have himself buried away from Thebes, possibly near Memphis. With the death of this pharaoh, the 20th dynasty closes and the new kingdom ends. Egypt would now be divided and weakened against the outside world. New empires were rising to the east, and the sun was slowly setting on the ancient Egyptians. The third intermediate period is the focus in the next episode. Thank you for joining us.